Hi, I'm Marcus and I'm the sound team content lead here at ROLI. I'm also a musician and producer, and I release music under the name Synthetic Epiphany. This is the ROLI Seaboard RISE 2. It's an MPE-enabled MIDI controller with a soft silicon keywave surface that allows you to be more expressive than ever before when controlling electronic sound sources. This is Drift. It's a new software synth plugin coming soon in all editions of Ableton Live 11.3. What makes Drift so special is that it's also MPE-enabled, which makes it a great partner to the Seaboard RISE in terms of expressive playing. So the first thing we're going to want to do before we start diving into Drift is just to make sure that we are able to play with MPE expression in Ableton Live. And to do that, it's really simple. We just need to go to the Options menu, scroll down to Preferences, make sure we're in the MIDI tab here, and then find our Seaboard RISE in the list and ensure that the MPE, remote, and track options are all enabled. It's also worth making sure that your RISE is in the default MPE mode. You can do this by opening up ROLI dashboard and then making sure that the MPE default mode is selected from the pane on the left. Alright, so now that we're all set up, we can start diving into Drift. First of all, we just want to make sure that we've got a blank MIDI channel in our Ableton project. Select that channel and then go to the Instruments panel here on the left. You'll see Drift in the list, and if you click the little drop-down arrow next to Drift, you'll notice that there's presets that are divided up into various categories. To add a preset to your track, you can either double-click it or drag it onto the channel like that. Let's check out some of those presets now. So Drift comes with over 50 presets covering a load of different styles and genres, and one of the best things about them is that they're pre-mapped to take advantage of the expressive capabilities of the Seaboard. The Seaboard gives you 5 dimensions through which you're able to control and manipulate sounds, and these are mapped to various different parameters depending on the Drift preset. So in this one, for example, the preset is called Fez Keys. We have per note pitch bend, we have pressure sensitivity, which in this case is controlling the waveform shape. And we also have a noise layer that is introduced on sliding vertically up the keywave surface. So if we take a closer look at the Drift interface, we can kind of see where those modulations are being applied and how we can adjust them. So in this example, pressing into the keywave surface is modulating the shape of oscillator 1. And if we want to kind of dial that back a little bit, like if it's a bit too sensitive to our playing or it's modulating the sound too much, then we can just click on this percentage here, drag it back a little bit, and that will restrict the range that playing motion will apply the modulation to the sound. We could also choose to control that parameter with a different playing motion or with an LFO. So for example, if I change that to slide, rather than pressing in on the keywave surface, sliding up will change the wave shape. Presets offer a really good way of just jumping straight into Drift and playing expressively with your Seaboard RISE. But for me, a lot of the magic comes from designing and creating my own sounds, and linking those in creative ways to parameters on the Seaboard. So let's try a little bit of that now. So on first glance, Drift might seem a little bit kind of limited or basic in comparison to some of the other soft synths out there. You've just got 2 oscillators, you've got a filter section, envelopes, LFO, but it's actually capable of some really interesting sounds, and it's got a lot more going on than might meet the eye. Where things start to get really interesting though is when we start looking at this drift control section. Vintage analog synths have this kind of organic character that's caused by subtle fluctuations in pitch and timbre and stuff that causes this kind of breathing between oscillators. And that's what the drift control seeks to emulate. So to demonstrate what that drift control does, I'm going to start off with a really simple patch. You can hear we've got a really static sound. There's nothing particularly interesting going on. But as I turn up the drift control, you'll be able to hear these subtle modulations being introduced into the sound that make it a lot more harmonically interesting and kind of organic feeling. Drift has various different modes of operation that you can select from the drop down here. And one of my particular favorites is the stereo effect, because that will take your voices and pan them across the stereo field to the extent that you specify. So that sounds something like this. You can hear as I turn that percentage up, we're getting this increased stereo image, which again adds a lot more kind of character to the sound. So now I've got this really nice breathing, organic, kind of wide sound, and I've just gone ahead and added some effects from Ableton stock library to increase the sense of space. So some delay, some reverb, and that sounds like this. Nice. So now I want to be able to use pressure on the Seaboard surface to be able to modulate the filter cutoff, and that will allow me to create these nice kind of swells. So to do that, I'm just going to go to the filter section here, and first of all I'm going to drag down the filter cutoff. Then I'm going to ensure that pressure is selected here, and then I'm going to increase the range of modulation up to quite high, so around 100%, and that will allow me to do this. Drift handles the lush, more melodic end of the spectrum really well, but it's also capable of some pretty out there sounds, and that's in part thanks to the fact that the LFO can be set to audio rate mode. To change the LFO mode, we just need to click between these 4 boxes here. These are frequency based, a sync mode, a time based mode, and most interestingly, an audio rate mode. Once we start applying that LFO to either the frequency of the oscillators or to the filter cutoff or something like that, we can get some really kind of out there results. So to do that, I'm going to make sure that I'm in audio rate mode here. I'm going to bring the filter cutoff down. I'm going to max out the resonance on it. Then in the frequency mod sources here, I'm going to make sure that I have LFO selected, and I'm going to turn that right up. And then playing with this ratio control is going to allow me to achieve some pretty out there effects. Now Drift only has one LFO, but thankfully in Ableton it's really easy to route different things together. So if we want to modulate that sound further, it's really easy to do so. So I'm going to add an OTT, which allows me to shape the kind of frequencies of the sound. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to find an LFO from the effects list of modulators here. I'm going to drag that on, and then I'm going to map it to these 3 frequency bands in OTT. Then I can use this rate control here, click to set it to a synced mode, and then I can use that to modulate my sound. For hands-on control when I'm playing, what I like to do is to link various parameters to the faders on my Seaboard RISE, and it's really easy to do that. So to put your RISE into MIDI mode, all you need to do is to click the power button, And you'll notice that you're in MIDI mode because the icons above the faders will disappear and the power button will flash white. Once you're in MIDI mode, you just need to click the MIDI icon in the top right of the screen here in Ableton. You'll notice that the various controls and the plugins that I'm using are lit up or highlighted, and I just need to click the control that I'd like to assign. So in this case, I'm going to assign the LFO rate. I'm going to click it, and then I'm going to move that fader on my Seaboard RISE. And you can see that the mapping has been created. Now, if I click out of this and I move the fader up and down, you'll see that I'm able to control the LFO rate by moving that fader up and down.